We're picking it up in verse 33 today, Psalm 107 and verse 33. And now, what's going to happen here? The psalmist has profiled 4 kinds of deliverance that God has brought about by his compassion and mercy. And the psalmist is going to show us now a glimpse of justice blended with compassion. He's going to show us a glimpse of sovereignty and love. God is sovereign. He never lets sin go undealt with. He is just, but in the middle of all of his justice, he's also merciful. And those who choose him are always glad they did, and those who reject him, it never goes well. Okay, that's the big picture of what the psalmist is saying, and he's going to use these pictures or metaphors that really would have made perfect sense to an ancient Hebrew. Okay, so let me do a flyby, talk through it real quickly, and then we'll dive a little deeper maybe next week. God, he turneth the rivers into a wilderness and the water springs into dry ground. God can take what is flourishing, the rivers and the water springs, and dry them right up. Okay, and there's a lot of reasons he would want to do that, but the picture is those who appear to be doing well in spite of their guilt, rebellion, defiance, and overt resistance to God. Those that seem like life is flourishing, God can dry that up that quick. Verse 34, a fruitful land into barrenness for the wickedness of them that dwell therein. See, that's the justice. God will deal with the wicked, even though for a while it looks like they've got flourishing rivers, great water springs, and abundant fruitfulness. The psalmist says the wickedness will catch up. Okay, those who have denied God's mercy, denied Jesus' atonement on the cross, the wickedness will come to account. God will deal with it. Verse 35 shows us the counter view. He turneth the wilderness into a standing water, and dry ground into water springs. So the same God that deals justly will also deal mercifully. And he can take us, this is cool too. He can let our wickedness dry our lives up. But then when we cry out to him, he can take that same dryness and turn it back into flourishing fruitfulness. The wilderness into a standing water or still water, and dry ground into water springs. And there he maketh the hungry, those that were hungry in their lostness, in their defiance, in their rebellion, in their wickedness. They were hungry, but they cried out to God for mercy. He can make the hungry to dwell and let them prepare a city for habitation and sow fields and plant vineyards, which may yield fruits of increase. This is exactly what happened when they went to Babylon. Nobody that lived in Israel would have wanted to go to Babylon, but God sent them there. And he said, when you go, I'm with you, and I'm going to bless you. Build homes, plant vineyards, have families, settle in. You're going to be there for a long time. This is your life now, so live it. And I'm going to give you increase. So they had just experienced this in the previous 2 generations. Verse 38, he blesseth them also, so that they are multiplied greatly, and suffereth not their cattle to decrease. Again they are minished and brought low through oppression and affliction and sorrow. Do you see the seasonality of this? Sometimes life is dry, and sometimes by our own choosing it became dry. But then we repent and we cry out for mercy, and life becomes flourishing again and fruitful and blessed, and we do well. And then we come back into a diminished time again, and we're brought low maybe through oppression or affliction or some kind of sorrow. Verse 40, he poureth contempt upon princes. By the way, princes would have been their oppressors often in Israel. Poureth contempt upon princes and causeth them to wander in the wilderness where there is no way. This is what he did to Nebuchadnezzar. So God can bring down those that exalt themselves against him or oppress his people. Yet setteth he the poor on high from affliction, and maketh them families like a flock. So God lifts up the poor. Blessed are the poor in spirit, Jesus said. Those who humble themselves, those who are destitute without God, he reaches in and sets them high, raises them high, values them, redeems them, rescues them from affliction, sets them in families like a flock. That's what a church is. The righteous shall see it and rejoice, and all iniquity shall stop her mouth. The righteous are those that have accepted God's righteousness. His declaration of innocence based on his mercy, based on his sacrifice for sin. Not, I'm good enough for God to declare me righteous, because God says there is none righteous, no, not one. Okay, the righteous are those that have fallen into God's mercy. The righteous are those who have been declared, they've been exonerated by God's justice, by God's grace and compassion, and they've been declared righteous, and they see these things and they rejoice that God will deal with iniquity. All iniquity shall stop her mouth. Whoso is wise, and by the way, whoso is wise and will observe these things, even they shall understand the loving kindness of the Lord. So we see in this last part of the psalm sort of a high overview and multiple view picture that God is just and merciful, that God will deal with righteous judgment, but also tender compassion. And there is no dichotomy, there's no conflict between those qualities, okay? God is perfectly just and perfectly loving. And anybody who rejects his perfect love is by default going to experience his perfect justice. But anybody who embraces his forgiving mercy, his tender heart, based on their own sinfulness and guilt, based on their own need for him, will be delivered from that justice and rescued by that mercy. What a great picture of the gospel. And my friends, that is enough for today, and what a great way to end Friday. Thanks for joining me this week for this time together. I hope you have a great Friday and a wonderful weekend wherever you are, and that you are encouraged in the Lord, and that you gather with your church family, worship him, serve him, join a team, use your gifts to bless the body. And as you live this weekend and next week, decide you will declare his works to the children of men, because that's why we are here.